You think that you're just going to go to these events and coaches are just going to show up. We don't even have the best of the best going against each other anymore.
Yeah.
And at that point, I realized that it was bigger than basketball. It's kind of watered down a little bit, if you want to call it that.
You got to have a skill set. Like, coaches are not just going to come get you.
A lot of trainers are like very funny about you working with other people. I'm just going to say it. I think a lot of times coaches are kind of feeding information to the parents that they want to hear. It doesn't help if they're the ninth and 10th person on that team. A lot of these kids are figuring out what they need to do to get their video views up. You know, they're not going to the playgrounds. They're not playing as much pickup. So the game isn't going to give them the same. For me, it was like, hey, if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything. They jump away from it before they see that transformation.
Impatient.
And now I'm gonna lose this kid, but this is a much better situation for them.
Did you know that I have 2 books? One called The Little Girl with Big Dreams. It's about an ambitious little girl who overcomes every no to say yes to a dream. The other is called Changing Lanes. It teaches you about the things that you learn from sport and how it translates to life after sport. Be sure to check these out at itsjustdifferentpod.com. Let's get to the episode.
Welcome to It's Just Different Podcast, where we bring on people who have been where you are trying to go and or helped countless athletes get there. Today, we got somebody from the Four Corners Live. Y'all, we met on the Four Corners Live. If y'all are not tuned into the Four Corners Live, I don't know what you're doing. It's on Instagram. But we got somebody all the way from New Jersey, and I get a chance to meet him face to, or I guess virtually still, but have a conversation on what he's doing. I've been watching socials and he's killing the game. Has been training forever, but have went full time the last 3 years. I call him Take Flight, but he might want to be called by his first name. We're gonna bring him right on.
What's going on? What's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing well. Weather is good. I'm golden. So
do I call you Gary or do I call you Take Flight? Because I like to just say Take Flight.
Hey, listen, that works. That works. Most of the people on social know me by Take Flight. In training, they just call me Gary. So either one is fine.
Okay, so I might go back and forward.
That's all right.
I appreciate you hopping on.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I've watched you on socials. You hopped on. How did you hop on Four Corners?
Actually, I just so I follow KP.
Okay, so KP.
I actually did an event with KP last summer. Mm-hmm. So I think one day maybe he jumped in the Four Corners and it came up on my feed. So I jumped in there and I was like, oh, I like what they're talking about. So
yeah,
I just been tuning in ever since.
I love it. We start this podcast with something that's different. The name of the podcast is called It's Just Different. What do you think is different in the girls' game now versus back then? And back then can be whenever, 2 years, 5 years, however far you want to go back.
Sure. I mean, obviously the biggest difference is, and some probably have a difference of opinion, but the biggest difference I think would be, you can't just, there's no way for people to just find you, right? They would say if you're good enough, they'll find you. And I don't think that that's the case anymore, especially with, with the transfer portal and all the things that have changed in the college landscape. So I think that's one of the biggest changes. And then of course, we're getting more and more teams every year, it seems like. So that's a big change. That's one of the biggest changes as well. So I think it's kind of I don't want to say it's lost its value, but where it used to be a place where the best of the best kind of meet, it's kind of watered down a little bit, if you want to call it that.
Yep. I want to go straight into that. If you're good enough, they'll find you, because I think that is a conversation that like a lot of people have, right? And I agree with you. Like, I think I used to be that way of like, I don't think I've ever been the if you good enough they'll find you. I don't think I've ever been on that
Mhm.
train, but I have been on it like you don't have to play circuit or you don't have to play with certain teams. You got to play against
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of coaches really AAU coaches really feel like no matter the team, we're gonna go play in the right tournaments. Like long as we
Sure.
play in out here in Texas, you got Heart of Texas or you got Clash of Clubs, you got Run for the Roses in Kentucky. You have some of these bigger
Yeah.
tournaments, and people think parents even think like, oh, we going to those tournaments, we're gonna get seen. Can you talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit deeper?
Yeah. So I think I mean, I think it's a couple different things. So one, I think that let's see how I'm just gonna say it. I think a lot of times coaches are kind of feeding information to the parents that they want to hear, and sometimes that information isn't really as accurate as we'd like to think it is. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
The other part of that is there's a lack of education for the parents, so they kind of have to go with either what this person said or what that person said and just
Hmm.
trust that that information is correct. So yeah, you might go to that tournament that the colleges are going to, but if you're playing on court 75, then it may not bring the same value that you think it's going to bring.
Hmm.
The other part of that is I think that, again, going back to that educational part, is you think that you're just going to go to these events and coaches are just going to show up. There's a work load that you have to put forth in order for those colleges, one, to know you exist, but then also know that you're going to be at this place at this
Hmm.
time on this court. So there's a little bit of work that has to go on, and whether your coach is doing it more so, it should be you doing it. But there's a lack of education in that part.
Right. And how can we help parents really understand? Because at the end of the day, some parents just don't know. And like you said, like you
Yeah.
just said, they're gonna go off of what said coach is saying for the most part. So how can we
Hmm.
help these parents ask the right questions? What questions should they be asking? How can they try to decipher through this is real information? This isn't the right team for me. We don't need to
Yeah.
go to this tournament, etc.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, that's actually a really good question. But I think one of the things that, you know, we can do as trainers or coaches or, just people that have been through it is just kind of continue to educate. I try to
Mm-hmm.
use my socials in that way. I try to use different, um, communication techniques to kind of just educate in that way, and
Mm-hmm.
just hope somebody picks up the information. But um, I think as far as what the parents can do, I mean, it's really just one of those things. Is it's not just trusting what somebody's telling you, but kind of
Mm-hmm.
just taking that step forward to say, okay, here's what they believe. Let me just maybe vet some other sources or some other things like that. So again, it goes back to just doing the work, and
Mm-hmm.
not just accepting the answers that you get.
Yep. Now, do you believe that these kids should only be playing on circuit teams?
I so I don't think that, one, that's all going to depend on the level that they're interested in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So of course, a lot of kids think that D1 is the way to go and it's D1 or bust, but that's not the reality of it. So one, I think that you have to kind of, again, educate yourself on what level your child is, and then figure out what you have to do to get there. And I think it's bigger than just the AAU team. I think it does help if they're playing on a circuit, but it doesn't help if they're the ninth and 10th person on that team. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I know a lot of, I'll say independents, but a lot of teams that aren't necessarily on the biggest circuits that still have players that are highly successful
Right.
at this point. And again, landscape is forever changing, so
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to say what works this year may not work next year.
Yeah. See, I've always I have an independent program. Actually, this year I decided to do away with my high school groups, just so I can really focus on the podcast. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to say one of the advantages I've always had is we were independent and been able to play against these circuit teams. So we're
Yeah.
playing. We went to New Orleans last year, and my 16s played four. We played Essence, Takeover, Missouri Phenom,
Mm.
and maybe somebody else, or maybe those three. But we played 3 to 4 EYBL teams in
Yeah.
one tournament. And that has always been like for me. I'm like, you can be independent long as you
You just got to
have a
play those.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a relationship with the directors. Now that's kind of changed a little bit for me, a little bit, just because
Yeah.
this year Nike took all the stops. So if I have a high school team, I can't play any of those EYBL teams during live period. Can't play none
Yeah.
of them. And me personally, I think that Adidas and Under Armour is gonna follow. I can be wrong, but I feel like one circuit do something, the other two gonna do the same thing.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
They've
I
got
think
to. They got to compete for that. You know what I mean?
exactly,
So,
exactly. I mean, it's a money game at the end of the day.
yeah.
That's their
Yeah.
business. So I think
Yep.
that Adidas and Under Armour is gonna do the same thing. So if they do that, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not talking about Select 40, Elite 40, none of that. I'm talking
Yeah.
straight independent teams. Who they gonna play against?
Yeah. And that's. I mean, I think the one thing that we have to kind of like just clear out is obviously EYBL is one of the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
Adidas and Under Armour are probably the next closest
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the independent circuits are still an avenue that have been successful, at least on this East Coast.
Yeah.
Hoop Group does a great job of putting some girls events on. They have an independent circuit league on the East Coast, and
Is that what it's
their
called? Hoop
teams.
group? Or is that the
Uh,
team?
it's called HGSL, I believe it is.
Okay.
It's so Hoop Group is one of the biggest. They're more known on the boys' side, but they've been getting more recognition on the girls' side as of late.
Okay.
But they have their own circuit now for the
Mm.
boys and the girls. And they've been pretty successful. Obviously, Atlantic City, not obviously, but we have the fortunate, we've been fortunate enough to have Atlantic City in our backyard. So that's a big stop for college coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And they have some other, places that they kind of hold events to. But I say that to say some of those independent circuits are finding some success.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's difficult to compare that to like an EYBL or Under Armour.
Right. And I think like for me, when I talk independence, I'm even like I'm saying you're not on anything. Like you got
Anything?
select,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you, yeah. Like I don't think enough. A lot of people talk about Select 40. That's an
yeah.
independent circuit.
Sure.
But like a lot of people don't talk, and it's talent in Select 40.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
you can go there and still get looked, but people kind of frown upon Select 40. So it's just
yeah.
like finding the even finding the right circuit.
Of course. Yeah. I think, what, to be honest, I think the biggest thing is like, and this is what I tell parents a lot of times, it's like a lot of the kids have already got the formula to build their brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? In that sense, if you go on TikTok, a lot of these kids are figuring out what they need to do to get their video views up. And
Mm-hmm.
once they figured it out, they're continuing to do it, right? That formula doesn't change when you're building your brand elsewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
I say that to say that's one of the biggest components that I feel that parents are missing, is building the brand of your child,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a big component of all of this recruiting stuff. Whereas if you can do that, then you start to feed into some of the algorithm games and who you're coming in front of the feeds and things like that. Now you can start getting the college coaches to kind of, maybe somebody knows this college coach that's,
Mm-hmm.
that you've come up on the feed of. And now all you have to do is kind of continue to build that brand and hopefully get that opportunity to bring them in wherever that, AAU stop is,
Mm-hmm.
but building that brand is part of the biggest one of the biggest things that I think that we're neglecting to do as
Mm-hmm.
parents.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think another neglection, and maybe not even neglection, I think it's not of importance really. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
parents' place of importance on it is we went straight into talking about them getting in front of coaches. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
the first thing we went into. But if we take it a step back, you got to have a skill set. Like coaches are not just gonna come get you. You got to have a skill set, and I don't know how it is there, but I know down here in Texas, or just in general, people that I see in general, I don't think there's a strong emphasis placed on training, like actually
Yeah,
getting in the gym and training.
yeah. So, and I'm glad you brought that up. And one of the things that I see, not only here in New Jersey, but I see it a lot of places, is that they've kind of gone past that training aspect. They're looking at what the AAU teams are going to do for them, what the
Mm-hmm.
coaches are going to do for them, what the high school coaches are going to do for them, and they're not allowing themselves to get into um, um, that skill building part because they're so focused on getting into the games and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
And
you, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was going to say I think one of the things that, again, as parents, what we have to understand is when we were coming up, one of the things that we used to do is we had the freedom to kind of understand what worked and what didn't work, right? Because we were on the playgrounds, we were playing in the parks, we were playing pickup games without the organization of it, without the adults kind of telling us that, hey, don't do that, or dictating what we should be doing. So we had the freedom to kind of understand what works and what doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when people say that the game is going to give us experience or give the kids experience, I think that's what they have in their mind is that
Mm-hmm.
when we grew up, that's how we learned. So if we
Right.
could apply that now, then it'll do the same thing. But the unfortunate part is we don't have that same. The kids don't have that same luxury. You know, they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to the playgrounds. They're not playing as much pickup. So the game isn't going to give them the same um, training, if you want to call it that,
Right.
that we had. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, I do. And I mentioned when I was introducing you, you obviously is a trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and have been full time 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been training in general?
So to be honest, I started doing it in um, when I started. It was probably like I'm gonna say 2010.
Okay.
But that's when I started as a coach, and I started as a coach with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, my wife and I kind of built this organization with the idea of trying to get these kids to the next level based on what we were seeing. And what I realized, or what I didn't realize, is I was training them the whole time. I wasn't necessarily coaching them.
Mm.
So we were doing when we got into practices, we weren't doing plays and stuff like that. We were doing dribbling drills for 15 minutes. We were doing full court layups and different things like that for the next 15 minutes. All of these different skill training things we were doing in our practices, and I thought that that was normal. Like I thought everybody did that. So that's kind of how everything started back in 2010, maybe even a little bit before that. But um, that's kind of what led me to now being that skill trainer.
And what made you, oh, yeah, what made you decide to go full time?
To be honest, I think there was one moment, and I don't really talk about the details of it, but I was in one particular training session, and I had a group of young ladies in this training session, and there was one young lady who was kind of lethargic, kind of like just mentally not in it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I picked up on it, and we kind of broke away from the training session, and we just kind of sat down and just and talked. And come to find out, she wasn't really doing good, mentally. So we talked about it. We kind of worked on that, and we just stayed in touch in that realm. Um, And at that point, I realized that it was bigger than basketball. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I think that was my calling for it, and I just felt like it was that time to kind of jump into it.
Got it. I want to kind of go into just the business of training for a little bit.
Sure,
There's trainers that watch these podcast episodes, and I want to
sure.
help them out a little bit. How are you able to actually build the business of training and be able to go full time?
Ooh, see, that's actually a good question. So, long story short, I had been doing it prior to 2019, or I guess yeah, 2020 is when I kind of went full time. But
Mm-hmm.
prior to that time, I had been doing it just like after work, going to train. Um, Everything started to take off, and I kind of built a program that was working, and then I was still doing my full time, but when I was doing the full time, it was like mentally I
Yeah,
was losing it. Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? I would come home and I would take out all of the things that were going on at work, the toxic things, and I would come home and take it out on the kids. Or
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be careful the way I phrase that. It was just like the smallest thing would make me snap. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Just arguing and things like that. Or I would come home and I would just you know start yelling at my wife. And
right.
again, I want to be light when I'm doing that. That's all it came to. But I realized it was me that was causing the problem. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So at that point, again, going back to all of the things that was already learning, um, it was that change that I needed in order for me to kind of reset life. Um, so at that point, when I did do that, I said I just went all in. I said, "Listen, I can't do this," and I quit and went all in.
Wow, that's dope. That's
Yeah,
pretty dope. When you're
yeah,
working
and
with
I
these,
didn't.
go ahead.
I was gonna say it didn't come without the challenges.
Right.
Right about that time that I would say less than a year after I quit, I COVID came.
Oh, I was because I was.
So
You said 2019, 2020, and I'm
y-
thinking that's COVID
yeah,
time.
yeah. So with that came a whole bunch of challenges, but for me it was like, hey, if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything.
So
I've
what did?
always been a
Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I've always been just a hustler and just
Hmm.
figuring out what those next steps need to be in order to make things work. But that's kind of how things came about.
So what adjustments were you able because you couldn't get in a gym? So what adjustments were you able to make during COVID?
So ironically, I was able to. I used a lot of Zoom. We were able to hold virtual sessions via Zoom, and everybody was at home at the time, so we were able to do those type of things as far as ball handling and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had a couple IG things that we were doing at the time, and just those little things again, just making being creative in how
Yeah.
we can make this work. And we did.
I love it. I was just gonna say creativity at its finest. That was everybody was getting just trying to get creative during COVID. What and I
Yeah,
feel like that started a lot of businesses.
it did. It did. The unfortunate part about that, and for me, it was because I left my job at the time. I wasn't able to get um, the unemployment benefits that
Mm-hmm.
that they were offering.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to. At the time, the government said, "Hey, we're going to do this freelance thing. Gig workers can get X amount of dollars," and they were denying me that as well. So it
Dang.
was. I mean, when you talk about the struggle, it was a struggle.
Did you know that I have two books? One called The Little Girl with Big Dreams. It's about an ambitious little girl who overcomes every no to say yes to her dream. The other is called Changing Lanes. It teaches you about the things that you learn from sport and how it translates to life after sport. Be sure to check these out at itsjustdifferentpod.com. Let's get to the episode.
But I couldn't have done it. My wife just definitely stepped up a bit, and did more than what should have, and it all worked out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I see your page. I see you training all the time, training multiple kids. When these kids are coming in the gym, like, what are some things that you're working on, like with them? Is there a certain baseline that you have of kids have to meet this, or what does that look like if I have a child that I'm bringing to you?
So actually, it's and I get a lot of flack for this, but I I actually train kids all the same.
Okay.
And by that I mean my my 4-year olds, yes, there's 4-year olds that come in there. They're doing the same thing that my high school kids are doing, right? The belief is that I don't want to train you for what you can get to today or
Mm-hmm.
what you can do today. I want to train you for whatever your goal is. If your goal is to make it to college basketball, I'm not going to spend time training you for your rec game tomorrow. I'm going to train you for college in the next 15 years. So that's the way that we approach training in general. So to answer your question, it's more or less whatever skill we're working on that week, everybody's getting the same skill,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of age and regardless of your basketball level.
Do they all work out together? Like, do you have like a fourth grader working out with a sophomore?
So it depends. So we have two different kind of programs. So we have a program that we would consider like our large group, and in those large groups, those are broken down into grades. So we have like first through seventh, and then we have eighth through 12th.
Mm-hmm.
In our semi-private classes, we might have we try to break it out into like age or skill, but we might there's been times where we've had our fourth grader with our 12th grader, and the beauty of it is because we're working on very fine details, the workout is as hard as you want to
Yeah.
make it. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So obviously the fourth grader might have a certain amount of struggle, and honestly I think they actually get it a little bit more than the high schoolers, right? Because they don't have that perceived
Yeah.
bad habits or whatever the case may be. So they're able to learn from each other. Do you know what I mean? And
Yep.
all of the players are good about not necessarily, hey, why am I in here working with this little kid? They understand it, they get it, and they're using it to kind of as a time to get better. They're worried about themselves and not worried about the person next to them.
Yeah. What would you say makes your training different from any other trainer?
Um, so I would say for us, so I don't know if you know, but I'm considered what they call an I'm possible skills trainer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm possible was founded by Micah Lancaster back in 2009, and our whole approach of this the training is based on a checklist. So there's different things that we're trying to achieve, and there's that could be the ability to float the ball, which is a skill that most trainers aren't going to work on, but it's a much needed skill to be able to do some of the more advanced things. So when you talk about what we're work or what makes us different, I think the fact that we're focusing on those minor details,
Mm-hmm.
opposed to trying to make sure that the kids are mastering one thing at a time. And I think that's
Makes
the biggest difference. So if you're going to a training, you might see a trainer working on, making sure a kid can finish with his left hand, um, and they're not moving on until they can get that left hand. Whereas there's different skills or different things that may unlock different characteristics or abilities
mm-hmm.
that would allow them to now go back and figure out why they weren't able to do that left hand. So I think that's the biggest difference.
That makes sense. Yeah, we have Martinez Martin. He's in Austin.
Yes,
He's
yes.
an impossible trainer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, he's really good.
Yep, he was on one of the episodes earlier. So yeah, he's in
Yeah.
Austin doing a really good job.
No, that's cool. No, he's a good. I haven't met him, but I've seen his stuff. I know of him, and
Hmm.
he does good stuff.
Yeah, he's pretty good. So if we're helping these parents and players out, that's another thing. I think that there's a just like we talked about teams. There's a new
Hmm.
trainer popping up every day.
Yep.
Everybody is
Yeah.
a trainer.
Hmm.
And again, parents don't really know. They see somebody with a ball, they see someone with cones, think, oh, they
Yeah.
can train my kid. What questions should parents be asking, or what should they be looking out for when choosing a trainer?
I would say one, you definitely want to kind of vet some other parents. Um,
Mm.
just figure out what it is that who they work with, why they work with them. Um, one of the things that I would say that you want to kind of, I don't want to say quiz or test, but a lot of trainers are like very funny about you working with other people.
Oh yeah.
That
Are you
because
one of those trainers?
no, not one bit. I actually encourage kids to kind of work with other people because there's going to be things that I think they could gain from other people that I may not be good at. My communication skills might be great, but then the next guy's communication skills may not be that well. So
Hmm.
there's different things um, that they can learn from different people. So I would say if there's a way for you to kind of gauge that, that would tell you everything that you need to know.
Hmm.
Because I've had so many different encounters where this trainer is upset because they're working with me,
Yeah.
and what it really boils down to is, listen, there's a possibility that you might be taking
Yep.
some money out of their pocket. So
Hmm.
of course they're going to be mad about it, but that's not a thing for me. I don't. And I think I don't know if it's a gift or a curse, right? Sometimes I feel like I've had people that have left for whatever reason or another. Um, and I think that it may have been the wrong decision, but it's not my job to kind of convince them otherwise. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? I think you have to allow them that freedom to learn. Where on the flip side of that is, I wonder sometimes if I would have pushed a little bit harder, would it have helped them in the
Yeah.
longer run? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's so, and that, yes, I do. That's so hard. Like I went through that a lot last year just with my teams. Like
Mm-hmm.
parents want to go to a different team,
Same
and
thing.
I
Yeah,
know it's not right. It's not the right decision, and it's hard because, like you just said, sometimes you have to allow the parent, you have to allow the kid to learn, to see
absolutely.
for themselves. But
Mm-hmm.
then on the flip side, it's like, okay, are we gonna waste this time for you to go do that?
Yeah.
So it's
And really
hard.
what it boils down to, and this is for coaches and trainers, what it really boils down to is your confidence, right?
Yeah.
Your
Oh yeah.
confidence as a trainer or a coach. I'm extremely confident in what I do and what
Mhm.
I have to give. So it doesn't bother me when they're going over to work with somebody else because I
Yeah.
know that, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work out the way that they think it's going to work out. And then they'll circle back.
Come right
Do you know
back.
what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
And that's the confidence level that I have. So it doesn't bother me when they're working with other people.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that I see a lot, just with parents in general, is, and this is for the people who are getting the training. They're doing everything they
Mm-hmm.
need to get. They putting their kids in training. But the one thing I hear so many times is it's not translating in the game. Why is it
Mm-hmm.
not translating in the game? Like, what advice would you give parent? What, two things. What advice would you give parents on that aspect? And what advice would you give kids if they are putting in the work and for whatever reason they're not applying it in the game?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I think that may result in that. And actually I just did a post on that too. But one of the things is they're just not allowing the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the one analogy I always use is, it may seem like you put on 10 pounds in a matter of a week, but unfortunately, it's not going to take a week to get that 10 pounds off. Do you know what
Right.
I mean? The, the improvement is not linear. is more on a curve as you go through. So it's going to be very slow in order to see something that you're doing
Mm-hmm.
actually translate. And a
Yeah.
lot of the mistakes that I see with parents is that they they jump away from it before they see that transformation.
Impatient.
And that, yes, yes. So that's one of the things that I see. And then the other thing is the pressure that comes with actually making it translate. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? When we go back to talking about um, kids being robots, or kids being um, having directions dictated to them and what they should be doing, they're less likely to want to try to do something if they know the consequences are going to be negative. Do you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? I'm
Uh-huh.
coming out of this game, or I'm looking over at my mom and dad, and they're they got that shrug.
Yeah. They done
Yeah.
threw their hands in the air.
Yeah. So I don't. Why am I going to try this to get that reaction? So those are some of the things that I think come with that.
Yeah. And one thing I've loved just from watching your content is the reason I started this podcast is to educate, mainly to educate
Yes,
parents, educate kids, and I think you do a really good job of just posting different things. Posting who makes your content first of all?
I
Do
do
you
all
make
of it.
you make all your
Yeah,
content?
yeah.
Do you schedule? Do you have like a scheduling app?
That's the goal, but it doesn't work that way.
You manually
No.
post everything?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
How much time would you say that takes a week?
Too much. No.
Right.
No. I mean, it depends. It depends on what it is. So, um, really, some of the ones that I have just been really just talking about my story, right? Just
Mhm.
giving them the things that I go through on a daily basis, the events or the situations that I've been through. So, kind of tailoring those stories takes some time, and then the content that goes along with that, or the video, is really just B-roll from my
Yeah.
skills trainings. But um, those are the small ones. The other ones get a little bit tricky because there's a little graphic stuff that comes with
Yeah.
it.
I
But
just knew you had like a team doing that.
no, that's all me. I have a graphic design background, so it comes a little bit easy to me, but it still takes work.
Wow, that's amazing. Two apps that you might want to look at is Planoly and Metrical. If you do want to,
Huh.
if you do want to start like scheduling some of it,
Yeah.
those are
No, I
pretty.
mean that's really the goal, is to get to a point where I can schedule it, but um a lot of it is just based on what I'm feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What the current wave is. I don't want to say wave, but what the current temperature in the room is. Just
Mm-hmm.
feeling some of that, and applying it. So,
Yeah,
but
that makes
ideally,
sense.
I would like to get to scheduling, make life a little bit easier.
I'm sure of that because I mean, are you mainly on Instagram or are you posting on multiple platforms?
So I started on Instagram. Things were slow. I went to TikTok when that came about. Grew a little bit there, and then had success on Instagram. So I've just been kind of like rolling with that so far. But the idea is to branch off onto some other things.
Yeah, but that's always good, especially like if you're doing it, like being able to be solely on one platform is good. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's where most of the audience is anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm amazed that you make all that content.
Yep.
Wow. And I think that's also a part of growth, like a part of the business of training.
Of course.
Because I see
Yeah.
your stuff all the time. So potential clients, things like that, they're gonna continue to see your content.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that I've been really good at. Like, um, in a and this is, just the outside business of training. It's not just being on the floor. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
being present. A lot of times, not only am I trying to get this content together, but the amount of time that I spend, just talking to the college kids and just making sure that their minds are right, and dealing with the things that they're dealing with, and it's a lot that goes into it, and it's not just being on the floor. So I think when you talk about skilled trainers wanting to be skilled trainers, just
Yeah.
know that's part of, that's
It's a
part of the
lot.
game.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
not just on court. It's not just getting the cones. It's and I think it's
Hmm.
even studying, like studying the game.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. And that's again, um, that's what I like about the impossible stuff is because you can start to study the game and see the game a little bit differently once you kind of start to get down to the small details of it.
Hmm.
So that's been helpful.
Yeah. And you say you're not getting back into AAU.
No, no. I mean, to be honest, it was really just when I started it, it was really just to make sure that I could help the kids get there. And
Hmm.
to be honest, what it really boiled down to is my son. Um, he wound up going to Ohio State,
Okay.
and I got when I saw when I saw that bill, like of what kids pay for college, I was like, I looked at my wife and I was like, listen, no, we can't. They can't.
This
They
ain't
can't.
it.
They can't. So, we kind of made that vow as like, listen, let's help these kids get, any kind of academic, athletic, whatever money they can get to start paying for some of this is going to be beneficial. And that was really that's how it kind of came about.
Hmm.
Um, and it just so happened that basketball was a great vehicle to do that.
Yeah. But now you're just gonna focus on training to do that. No more
Yeah,
coaching.
I don't, because to be honest, I don't. My X and O game is trash.
Mm.
So, it
Yeah.
was really I survived the younger ages because I would just let them go. They
Yeah.
had a lot of skills, and I could just let them go, and they would just do what they do. But it just there's too much involved in it now that I would go crazy if I did it. Just being able to be on the side, one, I'm able to help a lot more kids, and then two, the impact that I'm able to have in this vehicle is a lot bigger than the coaching vehicle for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. What do you think? I'm sure you're still around AAU and obviously
Of
your kids
course,
are
yeah,
playing.
yeah. I go watch all the time.
What do you think is the biggest issue in AAU?
Hmm. Um. I mean, I would say that there's a lot of ego involved.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of money involved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just, I'll say this. One of the things is we've reached a point where again we're not having the best of the best
Mm.
play,
Oh yeah.
right? So you wind up with two good players over here, and then one good play over here, and then another two over here, right?
Yep.
So it's like we don't even have the best of the best going against each other anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems. But
Yeah. I agree. And I think to me, I think it's because, and you said a little bit earlier, it's so many teams.
yeah, yeah,
Like it's so many teams. I will say that Texas, again, we talked about this a little bit on our live, but I think Texas has a ton of talent.
hmm,
I think it's gonna be hard to really, really dominate because it's so many circuit, so many, not only so many circuit teams, but it's so many teams in general. So,
yeah,
like you said, like some of these programs are holding on to the one kid or the two kid that they have when they need to be
yeah,
playing on this team, and it just goes across the board.
yeah. And now that you say that, I think that's one of the problems too. Is like we have to get to a point where again, and it goes back to egos. We have to get to a point where we're okay with putting a kid in a better situation,
Yeah,
right? We're okay with, hey, I'm going to lose this kid, but this is a much better situation for them over here.
for
And
sure.
unfortunately, we don't have nearly enough of that where, you know, we can just send kids to somebody that's really going to get them to that level because at the end of the day, we're selfish in the way that we want that credit for
Yep.
whatever they are able to do.
The credit is it. We want to be able to
Hmm.
say, I sent that kid there. That kid played for me.
Yeah.
That's what we want to be
Yep.
able to say.
Yep. Why? So other people can now come in and,
Yep.
do you know what I mean? So, and that's why for with the training thing is that's why I think it's so important to just like, hey, let them go experience different things, and hopefully we can get to this. Now, the sad part of that is that they're not able to kind of get to that level.
Mm-hmm.
They're not able to reach their maximum level because we're being selfish in the way that we kind of hold on to them.
Yep. I agree. I agree. This has been good. A lot of
Thank you.
information, a lot of valuable information. I know parents, players, and trainers are gonna take
Yes,
a lot of gems from this. Before we wrap up,
I hope so.
we got a top five, top five, top five. I got five things for you. Just answer it to your
Okay.
ability.
All right.
Biggest ick as a trainer.
Um, Other trainers being selfish.
Build your five. You can either build your five straight WNBA players or your five women's college players. Who you rolling with?
Oh,
That's
I
gonna
gotta
help you with
roll.
them X's and O's.
Yeah, I gotta roll with some of the home team players on this. I- I'm gonna take Caitlin out of
Okay.
the the conversation just because it is what it is. Um, you gotta have Juju.
Okay.
You gotta have Hannah. Um, Down in Florida, there's Leilani Correa. She's doing big things in the SEC, so I gotta have her there, and she's a hometown kid, so I gotta have her there.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna say over at Maryland, there is a kid that doesn't get a lot of credit, Faith Masonis,
Okay. I know you're talking
and
about.
yeah, she's just a dog in doing all of the things that most players don't want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and the leadership and communication that she has is, I think that's much needed at our level. So I'm gonna go with Faith, and then lastly, I'm gonna say Cameron, um,
Stanford.
over as uh, Brink.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
I like that. That's a good group. I like that. Wait, who's
yeah.
running? Who's running the one?
I gotta have Hannah on the
Oh,
one.
Hannah on the one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay. And Juju gonna be at the two.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll go with that. I like that. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
I think my wife and I got to get out of Jersey just because it's way too expensive.
Yeah.
But
Bet.
um, you know where we went? We went to Greece and had a really good time in Greece. So I'd like to go back there and live there. That's good.
Greece. I like that. If you can be doing anything else other than training every day, what would it be?
Hmm. Um. Probably. It's kind of like a trick question because influencing. I like the influencing stuff. So um I still can do some of that with the with the
Yeah.
training stuff, but that's where I would go.
Basically like social media influencing.
Hmm. Yeah, they
Okay.
they get bags. They get
I was gonna
bags.
ask you, have you been able to monetize your content?
Sometimes. So
Okay.
I'm really picky on who I work with. I get
Okay.
offers all the time to do stuff, but if it's not a brand that I mess with, then I don't really want to do it. So it
Yeah.
really has to be something that really um vibes with the lifestyle already.
Yeah.
I have done some stuff with Meta. That was fun. So in that way, that wasn't more like a monetization thing, but that was more like a networking thing, which I was able. It put me in a position to meet some amazing people,
Yeah.
and really get some gems from them.
That's dope. That's dope. I love it. Last one, pregame playlist. What are you listening to get you ready
Mm,
for the training sessions?
You gotta have anything by J. Cole.
Okay.
You gotta have uh I want to say Drake can get you right, and then um yeah, I'll stick with those two. There's
J.
others
Cole
in
and
there,
Drake.
but
Okay.
yeah,
I
yeah,
felt a little J. Cole vibe from you, so
yeah.
I
Oh
could
yeah.
all right. I love it. I love it. We start this podcast off with what is different in the game. I like to end with the person. So what will be different with you within the next 3 to 5 years?
It's funny because I just really like I haven't said this publicly, but it's been something that really I'm thinking about, and I know um, I'm getting ready to break loose. Like I'm gonna be that guy. Um,
Okay.
so that's something that's really just it's moments away from happening. So
But see,
that's
when you say, like, I gotta stop you right there though, because when you say that
hmm
guy, what does that mean? Because I feel like you that guy now. So what does that
so
guy mean? Look like?
I think that he has the freedom to do whatever he wants to do in terms of whenever um, my wife and I want to feel like going on vacation, we can go on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those types of things, but also just being in the room with different people.
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate to be when I worked with Meta. I was fortunate enough to be in the room with the likes of Asia Wilson and
Mm-hmm.
Sabrina Ionescu and Rich Paul and um, and some of the other players and just
Yeah.
influence in general. So when I say that guy that's in the room with all of those people
Yeah.
and deserves to be in that room with all
Yep.
of those people.
I love it. I love it. There you have it. If you could leave a message to parents, players, coaches, trainers, whoever you want the message to be for, do that
hmm
and tell the people where they can find you.
I think for everybody, and it's not just a basketball thing. You have to learn to give without expectation. Give without expecting to receive something in return. I think when you do that, you're able to life in general will repay you for that.
Mm,
So I think you've got to be able to do that. Just as if every one of us were able to do that, then um, I think we'd be in a better place. Lastly, you can find me on socials, Instagram, Take Flight Coach, Threads, Take Flight Coach, X, who is Take Flight. Uh, yeah, those are pretty much the places, and make sure you sign up for the mailing list and get all the gems that we're kicking out.
I love it. I didn't even get to ask why take flight. Why is everything take?
Believe it or not, when I was younger, I had bunnies, so I mean it. That's really where it came from. But as I grew, it just evolved into it being important that whether you play basketball or whether whatever you're trying to achieve, it's like at some point you just gotta take flight. You can't sit back and wait for things to come. You can't um, you can't fear the things that might happen. You just have to kind of take flight and see what happens.
I love it. I love it. We can't end it no better than that. I appreciate you for hopping on.
No
Thank y'all
problem.
for
Thank you
tuning
for
in.
having me.
Yes, I appreciate it. Make sure y'all follow the podcast. Make sure y'all follow It's Just Different Pod on socials. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all are watching, but you're not subscribing. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you follow on Apple, Spotify. We are going to keep bringing you guest after guest after guest, and we will be back next week.
Yes.